Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Lee Peterson, the host of the podcast WD Cast, which is called WD Cast because it's brought to you by WD Partners, whose tagline is Innovation at Scale. And that means that WD Partners has services that range from strategy, design, digital, and operations to architecture and construction management, end-to-end services that are at WDPartners.com. Thanks, WD, for sponsoring this show. And a second about the mission of what we're trying to do here. On WDcast, we want to talk about the burning business platforms of the 21st century and the challenges that are involved. And, not so concerned about what the business is as long as it's on fire. So there's obviously a lot to talk about. And today we're going to talk about the latest in modern retail and also journalism, as it turns out, which means store closings, physical .coms, big boxes, failed legacy brands, and in terms of journalism, the truth. I have with me via phone someone who has spent years reporting and writing on this topic and many others, that is retail. Áine Cain. Áine is an experienced writer and a reporter who now writes for Business Insider out of New York. Áine, thanks for joining us. How are you today?
Hi, so happy to be here. Thanks so much. And I'm doing good, and I hope you are too.
Yeah, so far so good. It is freezing cold here, so glad to be inside with these warm engineers.
Sounds very cozy.
Sometimes we walk out of the studio and go, God, thank God I can breathe again. Anyway, Áine, before we get going, I just have to ask you, I'm saying the name correct, right?
Yes, that's right. It's Áine. I tell people, even though it looks like Áine, it rhymes with Tanya.
That is a good one. And for all of you listening, it is Aine. That's hence the confusion. And that's Irish, right?
That's Irish, yep. It's Áine in Irish mythology is actually the goddess of summer, love, and livestock.
Livestock. Okay. Somehow, I don't know. When I think of Áine, I don't think of livestock. But
it's not a very glamorous job.
Yeah, I like the first part.
Yeah, it sounds nice. And then it gets a little more earthy.
Yeah, well, that's good. Your background and experience as a writer is super extensive, including at one point in time you were editor-in-chief. Your resume reads like some kind of famous authors. Could you indulge us a little bit and tell us about the road that you've chosen? Like, how did you get here to where you are?
Certainly. So I've wanted to be a reporter since seventh grade in middle school. That was around the time where the bottom dropped out of the economy. So I always sort of assumed it would never happen. But it ended up being mostly what I did in high school and college. So therefore, the one marketable skill that I had. So I came to Business Insider after graduating from the College of William and Mary, where I was editor-in-chief of the school paper, which was a beautiful disaster. It was lovely, but not as crazy as it sounds.
I know just what you mean. I know exactly what that is.
Many late hours spent in a basement freaking out over column width. But anyways.
Pronouns.
Pronouns, exactly. I've been at Business Insider ever since and joined the retail team last year.
Oh, okay. So I was just going to ask you, what exactly do you do then at Business Insider?
Certainly. So as senior reporter, I cover just kind of a range of things. My stores that I focus on are Walmart, Target, Home Depot, and Lowe's, and IKEA, actually. But just in general, covering the changing nature of retail. One thing that's near and dear to my heart is labor issues affecting retail employees and how people within the stores themselves are seeing some of these changes, good and bad, unfold. And then just trends that consumers should know about.
Well, so big box though, right? I mean, that's what we call it in design industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. And labor within that? So
yep, labor within that.
And most of those guys, all three that you mentioned, no unions. Is that correct?
That's correct. Although Walmart truck drivers are part of Teamsters, but within the stores, for the most part, most of these big boxes are very unfriendly to unions.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's Reaganomics, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And big box I think is in a pretty good position. Like we just did a study of over 100 brands called GBU, and we asked consumers like good, bad, and ugly. Is this brand good and bad and ugly? And most of the big box guys, including the ones that you just mentioned, got really nice, good rankings. And other than what we know, I mean, we did some qualitative on it, but why do you think that is? Why are consumers still gravitating? And I'll tell you, they're gravitating more towards big box than they are specialty now in malls. They're sort of deserting malls, but still, enthralled with big box. So why do you think that is?
I think big boxes are by dint of their size and ubiquity, and then also the nature of their business, are just really equipped to meet customers' needs today. For example, in terms of the e-commerce wars, places like Walmart and Target are able to really compete with something like Amazon that's e-commerce only, because they're everywhere. So when it comes to meeting the customer wherever they want to be met, whether that's in a store experience, in a pickup sort of situation, or via delivery, those retailers are just really ahead of the game on that. So people are responding to that kind of level of convenience and kind of doubling down on their loyalty to those big boxes.
Yeah, and part of that I think is because they have the wherewithal to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know a lot of specialty retailers were bought up by private equity, and there's certain demands financially for them, and a lot of them are in big debt. So to turn on a dime with something like buy online, pick up in store is not as easy for somebody like Abercrombie as it is for Walmart, which sounds contrarian, but it's really true. When we worked with Walmart, they implemented buy online, pick up in store on the outside of the store in 1,000 stores before the planning and zoning commissions could even catch up with them. So let me take that up a notch. Like what do you think of where retail is in general right now? I understand what your focus is, but surely, I mean, you've got an opinion about retail and what's going on with it.
Oh yeah. I think we're in a huge flux right now, as perhaps people within retail have seen what e-commerce can really do and what customers really expect. So now they're upping the ante on that. So I mentioned Target and Walmart competing with Amazon. Now we're seeing this huge battle for same day delivery, and just stuff that sounds kind of unthinkable 10 years ago. Getting your groceries delivered to your door the same day is now increasingly becoming a reality.
Yeah. And an expectation, right?
And an expectation, exactly. Consumers are, I'd say, increasingly picky. They're busy people, and they want their stuff in the most convenient way possible. And I think retailers are really all trying to outdo one another in terms of wooing those customers and providing them what they need.
So is that kind of thing putting a lot of stress on the employees? I mean, because of all of it, I mean, really, just within the last 10 years, all of a sudden you've got buy online, pick up in stores, ship to home. You've got returns, coming back to stores. Does that put a lot of stress on employees? Because they have to learn something new. It feels like every other month.
Oh my gosh, I would say it absolutely does. I know my colleague at BI, Shoshi Cement, has written a lot about how this has affected Target workers in specifically. Mm-hmm. So one thing that they're seeing is their back rooms have become totally chaotic.
Right.
Because they're having to act as a fulfillment center now, and they're not used to that. And it's like you see the pictures, and it's just a mess. So yeah, I think there's a learning curve, and retailers will really have to be careful that their employees aren't the ones being negatively affected or hurt in this whole shuffle.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, I think that Walmart and the same is happening with people like Whole Foods. All of a sudden, you're shopping in a store, and the store is like packed with pickers, people that are picking, goods and putting it in a basket and bringing it to the outside where people are coming to pick it up. So it's changed like the atmosphere on the inside of the store as well, which doesn't make it easy for the people that are running stock or the people that are trying to sell the customers. And in terms of that labor, is there more training now? Because there's this sort of tactical thing where customers just come in to pick stuff up. So you have pickers and you have, stock people and those functional elements. But is there a bigger push like on the associates to handle the customers that are coming in better, better customer service?
That's a really good question. When you ask retail executives that, they'll say, absolutely, we want our retail workers to be much more consumer facing and to be freed up from their other tasks in order to attend to the customer. When you ask retail employees, you get a bit of a different answer, believe it or not.
Yeah, I totally believe it.
Yeah, I've done 2 articles. One was about IKEA and one was about Lowe's. And in both cases, employees, basically, to sum them up, told me that they felt that recent restructuring efforts within the store, moving people around, eliminating certain roles, emphasizing other roles, ended up leaving them less able to take care of customers because it either dumped more work on them in their role, or it deprived people from a certain department that would be empty. So, I mean, with things like that, my theory is that some of those changes have been to basically emphasize part-time labor over full-time labor. Yeah. So, but the company line tends to be that everything is to improve customer service.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a daunting task really for retailers and referring to big box that were basically set up as warehouses. So, they told us like, we have a warehouse, and some of them are even called warehouses, and you have to go in there and shop. It's basically do it yourself, like find it yourself. And now, because of the pressure, a lot of different pressures, like we were talking about, the flux in retail, all of a sudden the employee has like several new roles. So it's got to be somewhat chaotic. And, just in general, it's pretty easy to kind of to figure out like who is to blame for this. And it's Amazon, really, because Amazon started to deliver things home. And I don't know about you, but it's, like crack or something. Like you start to buy things on Amazon, and next thing you know, you're buying paper towels and everything else that you used to go to the grocery for. And it just shows up at the house like in a couple of days. And that in itself puts a ton of pressure on retailers and employees as well. What do you think of Amazon being on the retail side? I mean, you're probably hearing it from employees as well, but what do you think of Amazon? Are they evil, or are they a game changer? Are they gonna make us better or worse?
Are they the Death Star or
that's right. Exactly.
Resistance? That's a great question. Amazon. Well, there's no question that they are a game changer. They have totally changed the way people have shopped. I think, to your point, people can get really addicted to that convenience. Amazon, I think, is seen by consumers as being very reliable. You're not going to, if you send your order out, and you don't really have to worry about it again, unless you have porch pirates or something, but that's kind of a separate issue. In terms of being evil, well, they've certainly forced a lot of retailers to really kind of overhaul their capabilities and adopt this kind of fulfillment, stores as fulfillment centers strategy. And that's not necessarily evil, but it's certainly been a huge impact in retail. I mean, I can speak from the employee side. Me and my colleague Isabel Hamilton interviewed dozens of warehouse employees, and they have some real issues in terms of labor that I think some they're working on. Some employees feel that they're not really. So so on that side, I think there's a lot of questions about what they're doing as a company in terms of ethical concerns. In terms of just the wider retail sphere, though, yeah, it's been huge. It's really upended a lot of things. Sometimes Amazon's kind of portrayed as this all-powerful, all-consuming monopoly, and in terms of their share of the retail space, they're not really there yet. But in terms of just what they've been able to drive in terms of change, it's been huge.
Yeah, and I always talk about this when I speak, and I think a lot of people don't realize it, but Amazon's revenues over the last 3 years has grown over $100 billion. $100 billion. I used to work for The Limited, which is now L Brands, and I remember when we hit $1 billion the first time, we were going nuts. That's $1 billion. Their revenue in 3 years has grown $100 billion. I mean, that's phenomenal. But to your point, it's coming a little bit out of everybody. Like Target had a good quarter, Walmart's doing pretty good, IKEA's doing pretty well as well. But there's still, I mean, imagine how well they'd be doing without Amazon and what Amazon takes from them, because a lot of the stuff they're selling is commodity product.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned this before, but improving customer experience. So what do you hear from employees about like experience retail? It's a big buzzword in all of retail, and I'm sure it's trickling down to employees too. Like, you've got to make this great customer experience. What do you hear from employees about that? Like, do they know what it is? I'm not sure I do, actually.
What is this experience retail you speak of?
Yes, exactly.
Well, I think in the cases that I mentioned with the IKEA and Lowe's employees who I've talked to, they feel like it's just kind of a buzzword that is thrown around to sound good. With other employees, I think, one of the companies I also report on is Costco. You see a lot of, right? So you see a ton of employees stay there for years.
Yeah.
That's their career. It's not a college job or something. And, for them, making the experience a good one for the customer is important because they are emotionally invested in their work. So, I'd say, I mean, the way I think about it is experience retail, I think, is somewhat of a buzzword that gets thrown around a lot. Because I think it can take a number of different forms, and I just don't even know how helpful it is grouping them all together. But for me, I mean, when you think, going back to Costco, you think about their food court, that's making the Costco experience, elevated in some way, instead of just going and buying a year's worth of dog food and toilet paper. Your brain is kind of wired to anticipate, a really cheap hot dog that tastes great, or, their pizza slices that are totally addictive. So, I mean, that's kind of elevating the experience. It's not just a Costco run. It's also, lunch with your, husband or wife or whoever you're shopping with. I think people often talk about experiential retail when it comes to the kind of big flashy things, like you're going to go into the store and AI is going to pick your outfit for you. But I think it really just boils down to the sort of fundamentals of having a good experience, and that can mean something very different for different retailers.
Yeah, like IKEA, for example. I think that's always been super experience retail, and I don't, it isn't like anything they said, well, let's go out and do experience retail. They just got it from the get-go. We're going to give you some macaroni and cheese, or at first, and we're going to have a place to take care of the kids, and we're going to show you these showroom stores, which are really cool, so you can go in there and actually live in a room, for a couple of minutes and then really get it. I mean, that to me has put somebody like IKEA way ahead of everybody else. Restoration Hardware does sort of the same thing. We just put out a piece about how technology is not the disruptor, but the customer is the disruptor. Do you think that's true?
Oh, yes. I think that's true. I think the numbers support that. I was looking at this National Retail Federation study. It was about tech and retail, and you saw something like, the technologies that people truly wanted, that over half of respondents were saying they wanted, were technologies that would show you whether a product was in stock, technologies that would show you the prices or reviews of different products, and the technologies that would help you find a product within the store. And the reason I bring all this up is none of this is particularly flashy, crazy technology.
Right.
If you went back to like a 1950s grocery store or like a medieval marketplace and you said, hey, do you want these things? People would probably be like, yeah, that's helpful. I think that's kind of showing you that what the consumer wants is convenience and just really helpful solutions. I think if we were seeing the technology being the real disruptor, we'd see a lot more people just kind of going for the flashy new stuff, or the kind of very futuristic sounding solutions. But instead, it's people just kind of want to be able to shop better, and retailers are responding to that.
I think those are all really good points. I mean, kiosks have failed in stores, and a lot of different technology that's been implemented at retail, beacon technology, things like that. It has all really done nothing. And especially for a company like Macy's that I think implemented every new tech piece that ever came out. Could be because they're in New York there and they get influenced highly, but I don't know that any of it's helped them. And at the same time, you look what Amazon does, and you can just go through a checklist of everything that you just said, and they do it all. The speed and convenience, efficiency, plus they throw a price in there, and then, wow, it's basically the fundamentals. It's not necessarily the technology that you can buy Amazon online, but it's how they do it.
Exactly. And how they do it just makes it so much easier for the customers, to the point where you don't even have to think about it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. Like I said, I'll buy something and then forget about it, and 2 days later it shows up or whatever, and you're like, oh boy, yeah, I took care of this. But it just says a lot about shopping for stuff like that, like paper towels. Like it's just mindless shopping. A good segue, though, because I want you to talk just a little bit about AI. I think it's along the same lines of what you just said, but we've got everything from commercials with rappers selling us AI, and AI is this, and AI is going to do that. And so far, the only thing I've found is that really works in AI is either Alexa, or I can talk to Google. I can ask Google questions on my phone. What do you think of AI, and are employees talking about it, like, potentially being replaced or anything like that?
I found that employees are really not talking about stuff like that, because I have asked, like, are you worried about the robots? And I usually get no.
You're worried about the robots. Good question.
Is Skynet coming in?
Yeah.
No. But I'd say that one thing we did a series at BI about AI and the future of AI in business, and I got the retail assignment. One thing that really fascinated me was I was reaching out to all these big name retailers, who I will not name here, saying, hey, do you want to talk about what you're doing? And most of them are kind of like, no, like a lot of the flashy stuff, we don't really think it's flashy stuff. It's good marketing when you're able to kind of tout your AI solution in the stores, but typically it's really just more of marketing, and you get some press buzz. The stuff that people did want to talk about was the back end stuff. So improving customer experience online, different levels of production and supply chain logistics. That's what is more exciting for, I think, a lot of people in retail when it comes to AI. Not any of the stuff that the consumer would see, or at least realize that they're seeing. So it's a bit less. I guess the reality in retail, it seems to me, is that AI is less of a sort of a flashy new toy and more of could fundamentally change how certain behind the scenes things are done. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's more voice technology than anything on the consumer side. Like, I think it's awesome telling, anything, just yelling out like, play this for me or buy that for me or do this. It's like a servant. And like if you call that AI, I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that it's basic fundamentals of service and care and speed and efficiency.
Yeah, and can you imagine if you could shop with your pocket butler and say, hey, Alexa or Jeeves or whatever, where's this shampoo in the store, and they were able to tell you. Like maybe that's the future,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I don't know. I am no AI expert, but I mean, I just spitballing there. That would be pretty cool.
I think there's no doubt though that technology works better when the customer brings it in the store than the retailer putting it in the store, whatever that might be. Okay, total side note, get off of retail here for a second. We heard a rumor that you're an Amtrak fan. Is that true?
Absolutely. Well, so you might have read my article I did.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So I made a 23-hour journey from Orlando to New York on the Amtrak. Definitely not because I just wanted to expense my return travel from a trip to Orlando.
Yeah.
Not because of that at all. And it was, I describe it as a fun ordeal.
Fun ordeal. You probably could have biked that in 24 hours. I'm just kidding.
Maybe walked it. Yeah, it was one of those things. You kind of coming into it being a millennial, I almost had these bizarre notions of like, sort of Murder on the Orient Express sort of aesthetic, right? Or beautiful carpets and like chandeliers and stuff. And I just ended up sitting with this lovely woman from Quebec, and we got to know each other. And then I ate dinner with a Mennonite family who had a very cute baby. So it was just like meeting people who you wouldn't normally meet. Although I will say sleeping in the seat.
Yeah.
So all these people emailed me afterwards like, you fool, you absolute idiot. Why did you not get a roomette? And I said, I didn't know that was a thing you could do.
Yeah, me neither. What is it? A roomette?
What is a roomette? So I slept in my seat, and let me just say, like, if you ever go on the Amtrak and do that, make sure to bring like a sweater, but be wearing a t-shirt underneath because the temperature fluctuates like crazy, which is a nightmare. Yeah.
Huh. Well, that sounds like fun.
It was great.
I used to take a train from when I was doing merchandise. We would look at prints in Lyon, France, and we would take like one of those bullet trains from Paris. And so it was all the way across the country in about an hour and a half to hour and 45 minutes. It was like 240 miles an hour. So we would take a morning train and basically have a cup of coffee, espresso, blah, 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 and be talking. And then we were there. And that was, you have to wonder, compared to Amtrak or whatever, in the United States, why we don't get on that. But
my gosh, Lee, you're like gloating right now. Like, oh, my fancy European train with our espressos, and I'm on this friggin' Amtrak for years, dying. I mean, goodness, it's awful.
Yeah, no, that's called left-handed bragging, actually.
It sounds amazing. I don't know why we don't get on it too. It would make life so much better for people who have to go on those long haul trips.
Yeah, I'm not even going to talk about the train to Kyoto.
That's just like next level.
Yeah, right.
That's God tier trains.
Okay. How about a bold prediction for 2020? What do you think? What do you think we're in for? Is Macy's going to go out? Are we in for a recession? How about something? What's on your mind? What do you think big is going to happen?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no. I mean, the recession thing is something everyone's been talking about. I know. I'm not going to add fuel to that though, because I have no idea what I'm talking about when it comes to that. I will admit that. As for Macy's, I really hope that's not the case. My granddad actually worked there as a guy who like loaded the trucks for years.
Oh,
So that would
that's
make
cool.
me, I know it would make me very sad if they went under. Not only because he still gets an employee discount. In terms of, I mean, I think what we're going to see is, in 2020, just the continued battle for this same day delivery, I think is going to continue to not only rage, but also have impact on the rest of retail. Maybe that's more of a boring prediction than who's going to win 2020 or whatnot. But I think that's something to really watch out for, because people just increasingly want their stuff when they want it and how they want it. And retailers seem to be very much bending over backwards to accommodate that. So I'm really curious to see how that'll affect non-big boxes, as you mentioned, the specialty stores, how they're even going to be able to compete with that. Will there be partnerships? I don't know. It'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think Nike's probably one of the best at that, because not only did they, I mean, it's kind of silently opened 500 stores. I don't know if you know that. Nike opened 500 stores, but they've also done a great job at DTC with their own website, but then they're on Walmart's marketplace and Amazon's marketplace. And then they cut out all these little vendors. So, to me, that looked like, I don't know, I saw that. And if I was somebody like Abercrombie or Express or a lot of the people that are here in this town, I'd be right behind them. But that's my training, knocking off things, I think.
Right. Well, one thing I'd like to see in 2020, or at least kind of keep following, is how the different Democratic presidential candidates sort of address some of the issues going on with retail labor. So I think Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders in particular have been talking a lot about, preventing places like Walmart and Amazon from doing, share buybacks, if they don't raise their wages to a certain degree. It'll be interesting to see how some of that plays out, and whether that will influence the rest of the Democratic pool, or whether it'll go away. So I'm definitely going to be watching that.
Yeah.
No predictions, though.
Yeah, right. I was just reading something where that type of thing is cyclical. And, after there's no unions for a certain amount of time, employees will stand up and say, we've kind of had enough of this, and here's our demands, whatever that might be. And I'm not so sure it's always unions, but employees will stand up, especially when you get to the point where, the CEO's salary is public, and you look at the CEO's salary is as much as, half of the company's. Sooner or later, half of the company is going to stand up and say, let's spread the wealth a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I think we're definitely there.
Yeah, we are. That's for sure. When you get to like 0.01% type of thing, it's not even 99% anymore. It's like 99.8%. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else that you'd like to add before we go to our quick little infamous lightning round?
Oh, well, just thank you so much for having me on. But I'll bring on the lightning round.
Okay. All right. So here goes. I'm going to reel something off, and I want you to say the first thing that comes to your mind about it.
Okay.
Okay. So, okay, boomer.
Make it stop.
Uh-oh, that was an LOL. I asked somebody else that once, and they said, ageism.
Oh, no, I support the meme, but I don't support the discourse around the meme.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I think that's probably true. Yeah, we're definitely not Native Americans in learning from our elders, are we?
With the boomers, we probably shouldn't be.
Yeah, that could be. Hence, no unions.
Yeah, exactly.
Your favorite city?
New York.
Really?
Yes.
Huh. Okay.
I'm boring. I have to say, I'm from around here.
No, I'm with you though. I mean, for me, it's parts of New York, like West Village and Washington. I love Washington Square. I could just camp out there, I think, and go to the coffee shops and hear bands every now and then, that type of thing.
It's got everything. That's the thing. It's it's so huge that it's like you almost can't miss.
Yeah. Maureen Dowd.
Okay, boomer.
But did you see her article, Okay Millennial?
Oh God, no.
Yeah, it was good. I think I
Here's what
encourage.
I want to say as an angry millennial. There's been so much millennials are lazy, millennials are this and that. Yeah, it was bound to come around at a certain point.
The Okay Boomer?
Yeah,
Yeah, well.
it's like revenge.
Well, not only that, but I think there's an element of boomers, as we all know, are living longer. They're a little bit healthier, and none of them saved any money, and so they're still working, and they're in positions that could be filled by younger people. So, and I just have to say, and again, it's my opinion, not the opinion of the company, but but. That's kind of what needs to happen at retail in my mind. Like younger people need to get a hold of it. And it's one of the things about, back to the Democratic candidates, you think like, I want like an 80-year-old guy in charge here, 80-year-old person in charge. Like, I don't know. I'm looking for somebody young to come and help us poor boomers.
Well, here's one thing that I feel very upset with regarding the boomers in retail. A lot of the folks at IKEA and Lowe's who I spoke to for those articles felt that the old timers were being pushed out by some of these changes. And that's really tragic because they've dedicated their careers to those companies, and they won't, because they're older and ageism being what it is, a huge reality in retail in particular. They're not going to find new jobs, or at least not new jobs at the level that they had. And I think that's something that's very awful. And so I don't want to malign all boomers, but it's something that's interesting to kind of see that generational shift happen. And then the 20-year-olds who are coming in, they're just taking part-time jobs, and they're not being trained in a way that they'll be able to replicate their predecessors' careers. So it's like, it hurts everyone.
Yeah. And, I have to say the error on my part is, in general, I think about boomers who are in charge, who are running the companies, like the 65-year-old CEO. And then, like big things, they always think, like, what's the financial implication of that? And apparently, the one guy in charge of Amazon doesn't give a crap about that. I mean, he's moving forward with everything new and running circles around these guys that are measuring things, I think, in an ancient manner. Okay.
A biscuit's out.
Yeah. Favorite food?
Mac and cheese.
Oh, me too.
Yes.
I can't do it. Like, I used to give it to my kids when they were little, and I'd wind up eating half of it.
It's just a very pure and wonderful comfort food.
Oh my God, yeah, it's so great, especially like homemade stuff versus craft or whatever. Sorry.
Yeah.
You're addicted to?
This really bad, since canceled History Channel show called Missing in Alaska. I've been doing a rewatch recently, and it's been a trip. It's this horrible production value show where they pretend that basically supernatural entities are responsible for like strange occurrences in Alaska.
Oh,
it's so bad.
I've read about that with Native Americans there, like disappearances and stuff like that. But
well, I mean, it's kind of tragic, and this is why it's guilty pleasure, because there are a lot of disappearances in Alaska, but it's also because it's such a huge state and there's so much dangerous wilderness there. But these guys, it's like they act like, oh, it might have been like gnomes. Like, I'm not even kidding. I just watched an episode where they were talking about how gnomes might be behind some of these disappearances. It was insane. Like, you can't make it up.
Yeah, that's another LOL right there.
I guess I just feel like I'm watching it and I'm like, how did this get made? Like, I want to read a tell-all about the whole thing. So that's my current obsession.
There's a certain amount of Into the Wild about that.
Oh, yeah.
Getting lost in Alaska. I mean, that's a great book. It sounds like you've read it, but
Oh yeah, I love that book.
Yeah, it's, terrific. Like a rite of passage at the same time, oops, went a little too far.
Oh God, yeah. Jeez.
Okay, Anya, thank you very much. You've been super gracious and taking time and some awesome answers. We appreciate it very much. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
And people, be sure and listen next time for some more human interactions on topics, and I'm serious as a stone about that. Also, be sure and subscribe to this podcast. WDcast is at wdpartners.com. Go to the menu hamburger and hit what we think. Then go to the very bottom of that page and in the middle and hit the podcast icon and pick one of them. We've got a bunch in there. Google, INS, who does pop-up stores, EY, Fitch, and we even spoke to Alexa a little bit. So thank you for listening. Stay frosty out there, and we'll talk to you soon.